You know, I've spent decades studying the patterns of how governments handle money, and there's something peculiar happening with Social Security that most folks aren't connecting the dots on. Tomorrow, January 25th, is not a regular day in the federal payment calendar, and if your birthday falls between the 21st and 31st of any month, you need to understand exactly what's landing in your account. The Social Security Administration follows a strict schedule where payments arrive on specific Wednesdays based on birth dates, but here's what nobody's explaining clearly. This isn't just another deposit. This is the first full manifestation of the 2026 financial landscape hitting your bank account, and the arithmetic tells a story that should concern every rational person. The 2.8% cost of living adjustment translates to an additional $56 for the average retiree, which sounds reasonable on the surface. But Charlie always taught that you have to look at what's being taken away while everyone's celebrating what's being given. Medicare. Part B premiums are absorbing roughly $17.90 of that increase, which means your net gain is significantly smaller than the headlines suggest. The government scheduling system is mathematically precise. Birthdays 21st through 31st receive deposits on the fourth Wednesday, but precision in timing doesn't equal precision in purchasing power. What I'm watching is how this plays out across 12 months when you factor in real grocery inflation, real utility costs, and real healthcare expenses. Tomorrow's deposit represents a test. Can you make rational financial decisions when the numbers look better than they actually perform? That's the question every person receiving this payment batch needs to answer for themselves. Now let me walk you through the mechanics of what's actually happening here, because the Social Security Administration operates with the precision of a Swiss watch, even if the economic outcomes don't always match that precision. Payments to beneficiaries born between the 21st and 31st of any month are distributed on the fourth Wednesday, which is tomorrow, January 25th. This isn't arbitrary. It's a system designed decades ago to spread the payment load across the banking system, and it works exactly as programmed every single month. But here's what I've learned after studying complex systems for 70 years. Just because a system operates with mechanical perfection doesn't mean it's delivering optimal results for the people depending on it. Let me tell you what's really in that deposit. The average retiree is looking at $2,071 per month now, up from roughly $2,015. That's the $56 increase everyone's celebrating. But I want you to think like an investor for a moment. When someone offers you a return, you don't just look at the nominal number, you look at what's being taken out before you get to keep anything. Medicare. Part B premiums climb from $185 to $202.90, which represents almost an $18 monthly deduction that happens automatically, right off the top of your Social Security check before you even see it. So that $56 increase, you're actually netting about $38 in real purchasing power if you're enrolled in Medicare, which most people receiving these payments are. Now here's where it gets interesting from a behavioral economics standpoint. The government announces a 2.8% cost of living adjustment, and people hear increase, and they feel momentarily relieved. But the Medicare premium hike consumes roughly 1/3 of the adjustment, effectively reducing the actual benefit to about 1.9% when you do the real arithmetic. That's significantly below the current inflation rate, which means you're losing ground in purchasing power even as the numbers on your statement show an increase. This is what I call the illusion of progress. Your check is bigger, but your financial position is weaker. It's the same psychological trap that catches investors who celebrate dividend increases without noticing that the stock price is declining. I've watched this pattern repeat itself for 3 consecutive years now, and the mathematics are becoming increasingly unfavorable. Each year from 2024 through 2026, Medicare Part B premiums have risen faster than Social Security's cost of living adjustments. This isn't a coincidence or a temporary aberration. It's a structural problem that reveals something fundamental about how healthcare inflation operates differently from general consumer price inflation. Medical costs are rising at roughly 3 times the rate of the Social Security adjustment, and that gap compounds over time. If you're planning your retirement budget on the assumption that Social Security will maintain maintain your purchasing power, you're making a calculation error that could prove expensive over a 20 or 30-year retirement. Now, there's a protection mechanism that most people don't understand called the hold harmless provision, and it's worth explaining because it affects a small but important group of beneficiaries. This rule prevents your monthly Social Security payment from decreasing if the Medicare Part B premium increase exceeds your cost of living adjustment. Let's say your total Social Security benefit is around $600 or less per month. Without this protection, the Medicare premium increase could actually cause your net check to go down from one year to the next. The hold harmless provision caps how much can be deducted for Medicare premiums in these situations, ensuring your take-home amount doesn't decline. But here's the catch that nobody talks about. This protection is temporary. In future years, when your benefit increases enough, Medicare will essentially claw back those premium amounts you didn't pay, bringing you back up to the full standard premium everyone else is paying. What this means practically is that people with the smallest Social Security benefits get temporary protection, but they're also the ones for whom every dollar matters most. They're not building wealth with these payments. They're trying to cover basic necessities, and even with hold harmless protection, they're watching their purchasing power erode month by month. In a survey conducted among older adults, 77% said a 3% adjustment wouldn't be sufficient to keep pace with rising prices, and they're receiving even less than 3%. These aren't people complaining because they want luxury items. They're telling you that the arithmetic doesn't work for buying food, paying utilities, and covering prescription medications. Now let's talk about something that could partially offset these challenges, because there's a new development this year that changes the tax picture for some beneficiaries. Trump's tax legislation introduced a $6,000 deduction for qualifying seniors age 65 and older, and this applies to the 2025 tax year that you'll file in early 2026. This is in addition to the standard deduction and the existing additional deductions seniors already receive. If you're single and qualify, you could potentially deduct up to $23,750 total. For married couples filing jointly where both spouses are 65 or older, that number goes up to $46,700. But before you start celebrating, let me explain how the qualification works, because this is where most people get tripped up. The deduction phases out for single filers with modified adjusted gross income over $75,000 and joint filers over $150,000. It reduces by 6 cents for every dollar you earn above those thresholds, and it disappears completely once you hit $175,000 for singles or $250,000 for couples. More importantly, this deduction doesn't directly eliminate taxes on your Social Security benefits. What it does is lower your overall taxable income, which indirectly can reduce how much of your Social Security gets taxed, depending on your total income picture. Here's where the mental model needs to be crystal clear. Social Security benefits become taxable when your combined income exceeds certain thresholds. For a single person, if your combined income is below $25,000, none of your benefits are taxed. Between $25,000 and $34,000, up to 50% can be taxed. Above $34,000, up to 85% of your benefits can be subject to taxation. The new $6,000 deduction helps by reducing your taxable income, potentially keeping you in a lower bracket, or reducing the portion of benefits that get taxed. But it's not a magic eraser that eliminates all tax obligations on Social Security, despite what some of the political rhetoric might have suggested. I want to emphasize something about this temporary deduction because timing matters in financial planning. This provision is scheduled to expire after the 2028 tax year, which means you have 4 years total to benefit from it: 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028. After that, unless Congress extends it, the deduction disappears. This creates what I call a narrow window of opportunity. If you have flexibility in when you take certain retirement account withdrawals, or when you realize capital gains, or when you do Roth conversions, these next few years might be strategically advantageous, but you need to be thinking ahead, not just reacting to each tax season as it arrives. The broader question I keep coming back to is this: what is the real rate of return on Social Security contributions over a working lifetime, and how does that compare to what people could have achieved with alternative arrangements? I'm not suggesting we dismantle the system, but we should be honest about its performance characteristics. You pay into Social Security your entire working life through payroll taxes. In 2026, you'll pay the Social Security tax on work income up to $184,500, which is up from $176,100 in 2025. That's the wage-based maximum, and every year it gets adjusted upward. Now think about compound interest and what those dollars could have earned if invested differently over a 40-year career. I'm not making a political argument here. I'm making an arithmetic observation. The returns that Social Security provides, especially for higher-earning individuals who hit that wage base cap, are substantially lower than what diversified investment portfolios have historically delivered. The program was designed as social insurance, not as an investment vehicle, but that distinction gets lost when people are told to view it as their retirement foundation. It's insurance against living too long and running out of money, which has value, but that insurance comes at a significant opportunity cost that compounds over decades. What concerns me most is how few people understand the sustainability questions hanging over the entire system. The Social Security trust funds are projected to be depleted sometime in the next decade or so, depending on various economic assumptions. When that happens, incoming payroll taxes will only cover about 75 to 80% of scheduled benefits. Congress will have to act at some point, either by raising taxes, cutting benefits, increasing the retirement age, means testing benefits more aggressively, or some combination of all these options. None of these solutions are politically palatable, which is why both parties keep kicking the problem down the road. But arithmetic doesn't care about politics. The math will eventually force decisions that many current beneficiaries aren't anticipating. This is why I keep emphasizing the need to think probabilistically about your retirement income. Social Security should be one component of your plan, not the entire structure. If your retirement strategy depends completely on Social Security maintaining its purchasing power and never experiencing benefit cuts, you're taking on more risk than you probably realize. Diversification isn't just about spreading money across different stocks and bonds. It's about having multiple sources of income that aren't all subject to the same political and economic risks. Some people will have pensions, though those are becoming rarer. Others have retirement accounts, rental income, part-time work, or other streams. The more independent sources you have, the less vulnerable you are to changes in any single program. Let me bring this back to tomorrow's deposit because I want you to see it clearly for what it represents. You're going to see a number appear in your account that's slightly larger than last month's number. That's factually accurate. But when you adjust for what's being automatically deducted for Medicare, when you account for the actual inflation you're experiencing in your personal spending on groceries and utilities and gasoline, when you factor in the rising costs of health care that Medicare doesn't fully cover, that larger nominal number is delivering less real purchasing power than it did last year at this time. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. And realism is what allows you to make intelligent decisions about how to manage what you have. The $6,000 tax deduction might help offset some of this erosion for people whose income falls within the qualification ranges. If you're in that group, make sure you're working with someone who understands how to optimize this temporary benefit over the next 4 years. If your income is too high to qualify, you're probably less dependent on Social Security anyway, but you should still be planning for potential changes to the program that could affect your expected benefits. And if your income is so low that you don't pay much federal tax to begin with, the deduction doesn't help you at all, which means you're facing the full force of that purchasing power decline with no offsetting tax benefit. What would Charlie Munger do in your situation? He'd start by getting completely clear on the actual numbers. Not the numbers in the press releases, but the numbers that show up in your bank account after all deductions. He'd calculate his real expenses, not what he wishes they were or what they used to be, but what they actually cost today. He'd identify every source of income and evaluate whether each source is maintaining, growing, or shrinking in real terms. And then he'd make rational decisions based on that clear-eyed assessment. Maybe that means cutting certain discretionary expenses. Maybe it means finding ways to generate additional income. Maybe it means relocating to an area with lower living costs. Maybe it means tapping home equity strategically. The specific tactics matter less than the underlying approach. See reality clearly, accept what you can't control, and take intelligent action on what you can control. Tomorrow's deposit is coming, that's certain. It will be larger than previous deposits in nominal terms. That's also certain. But whether it represents genuine improvement in your financial security depends entirely on how you measure it and what you do with that understanding. The system operates with mechanical precision, but you're the one who has to navigate the economic reality it creates. Make sure you're looking at the right numbers and asking the right questions.